All right, welcome to episode 2 of the Not My Job Pod, where I talk to people who have a job that is not my own. So today we are joined by one of my best friends in the world, if not my best friend, Zane Kelly, who is currently on a slight career pivot / change and back in school. And then I don't know if we call it on the side, but also working as a McDonald's crew member, which I feel like is it's not the most interesting bit. Your studies are also very interesting, but I'm very excited to talk about McDonald's.
Yeah. I think the best thing anyone's ever said to me about my job working in McDonald's is when you told me once it was a canon event.
I feel like it is though, because like, I don't know, I'm the American and I honestly, I never go to McDonald's like almost ever. And whenever I would travel with you, you were like, I have to go try McDonald's because I've never been to McDonald's in Thailand. I've never been to McDonald's in like whatever country. Like, I feel like you're always like, we have to go.
I do keep a running spreadsheet of every Big Mac I've ever tried in any country with a leaderboard system of where the best ones are. That's something that I do.
Yeah, so I think you working at McDonald's was always going to be a canon event.
Yeah, I kind of like it. You know how they're always like, oh, you should never see where like the meat is cooked or whatever. And I'm like, nah, it kind of just makes me love it more.
I love that for you.
I love it too. I genuinely do.
Well, let's talk about first how you got here and what happened that, because when we met, you were formerly a director of studies of a private language school in China. And then I left China and, well, I was in a different city, but honestly, the details don't matter. But you were in China during the whole pandemic, which I do want to touch on because I think that is interesting. So what happened?
Well, I mean, honestly, like the first year and a half of the pandemic, when it was like really bad for everyone else, it wasn't bad for us in China. The government acted like really quickly and they just closed everything down. So you could leave the country if you wanted, but you wouldn't be getting back in. And everyone who was in and who was determined to just stay and see it out, you were stuck in China, but you could do anything you wanted in China. And China's so huge, it's got like every biome in it, it's got beaches, it's got mountains. You could go anywhere and do anything, so you didn't really feel like you were missing out, but you did have this like looming sense of being trapped, just the knowledge that you couldn't leave. But we had a lot of freedom where a lot of people were like, oh, we had to stay in, or we could only be 5 people in the supermarket at a time. For us, it was just like business as usual. We could go out, we could party, we could go to clubs or whatever, but we could just never leave the country.
Yeah. I feel like, well, because I remember you came to visit me. I was living in Chicago then, and you came to visit in Chicago. And then you sent me a picture. Oh, we were like trying to find a mask for you to, because this was was it January or
It
February
was
2020?
the last week of January 2020. And I was trying to come back to China and my work, like WhatsApp group was blowing up with people talking about the virus. And we hadn't watched the TV the whole time. We watched Peaky Blinders on Netflix, but we didn't sit and watch like the news or something. I had no idea what was going on. And then
But
you
in
were
the
trying
US,
everywhere to find a mask for me, and there was like none in stores anywhere.
well, because then nobody was wearing the US didn't have problems until like March. So I feel like it was just so like, oh, this is a China problem. And I remember thinking like, oh, maybe you should stay here another week and like until it all blows over.
Yeah, I remember thinking about that because I was like really tempted to just stay another week with you in Chicago. And then I got to the airport to get my flight back to Shanghai, and I swear there were only 5 of us on that plane.
No, literally, you sent me a photo of you on that plane, and it was like you and like, yeah, a handful of other people. It was surreal.
Yeah, no one was going back into the country at that time. And it, like, the minute I stepped off of that plane, like, I was in the airport in Shanghai, but I got my connection into Xi'an, and the minute I stepped off the plane, it was like a different world. You had to have masks on everywhere. I had to give my passport to the taxi so that he could check my residence permit that I had somewhere to go because the place was just getting locked down. And then, yeah, we weren't required to stay in our houses, but everyone was too scared to go out. And then eventually, like, no new cases came into China, so they just relaxed everything. It wasn't until maybe like a year and a half, maybe like almost 2 years into the pandemic, that we started having problems when China opened the borders again. And that's when stuff went real bad, and that's when I started thinking like, I don't think I can stay here anymore.
Well, because they had like health QR codes, right? That you would have to scan to go anywhere. So like if you're on the metro or something, you have to scan to show that you're COVID negative.
Yeah, so your Chinese WhatsApp, WeChat, you know what WeChat is, but like for people who don't,
There,
it's
yeah.
like Chinese WhatsApp, but it's connected to everything. So it's like WhatsApp if inside WhatsApp had Uber Eats and PayPal and everything all in one place. And you can also do like your health insurance and stuff through it, but it's all connected to your ID card. And if you're a foreigner, that means it's connected to your passport. So the government can see everything about you and know everything, but you would get issued a QR code and you would just have to scan it wherever you went. You left your building, you scanned to say you went out. You got on the subway, you scanned to say you went. And anytime you went in or out of a door, you would just scan it. And we never bothered too much about it because it was just, everyone's QR code was green. It was just like China being paranoid or whatever. Then when they started unrolling the vaccine, your QR was green but with a gold bar to say you had been fully vaccinated. If you didn't have the gold bar, you were not allowed in certain buildings. So you wouldn't be allowed on intercity trains and you wouldn't be allowed into like schools or anywhere where people were like at risk. You could still go to the supermarket or whatever if you weren't vaccinated, but you couldn't leave your city and you couldn't go into schools or hospitals or stuff unless it was to be vaccinated.
And it's almost like they're controlling where you can move. And I don't know, that feels like creepy or
Yeah.
creepier.
I mean, at the time, because I don't have any issues with vaccination, I think vaccinations are a great thing. So I was like first in line when they started rolling out the vaccine because I was like, I want it. I don't ever want to get COVID. Shoot me up. Give me the vaccine. So yeah, I remember I was part of the first group of foreigners that went to go and get it. So I went to the big city hospital right in the middle of town to get it done. And there was maybe about 60 foreigners all waiting to get it done. It was just for foreigners that day. And they were only letting in about 100 at a time. But I went and got that and I told everyone in my office, it's fine. We should all just go and do this. Some people refused to get the vaccine in my office. I can't tell people that they have to get the vaccine. Like, no one has that right. But I did tell them, the government says you need the vaccine to come into a school. This is a school. If you do not have the vaccine, I'm afraid you just don't have a job anymore.
Okay.
2 teachers stood their ground and said that they were refusing to get the vaccine. So I did have to let them go because I can't continue to pay people who aren't coming in to do the job. Well, not even me. Like, I say that as if I was in charge of people's pay. I was just the middleman.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like government's kind of above all in China. Like you kind of don't get much of a say there. But I remember like it got crazier like towards the end when you were like, okay, I gotta get out of here. Like this is starting to get a bit crazy. And then you had to like bike to go do your COVID test and then bike back because they wouldn't let you in the taxi, right?
Yeah. So basically when people started coming back into China, because for all this time, even Chinese nationals weren't allowed into their country. They were kept outside. But China relaxed the rules a bit and people started returning home to China, but they were bringing COVID in with them. And at that point, it was no longer a guarantee that your QR code would be green. Because if one of those people had COVID and they were in the same shopping mall at the same time as you, your whole QR code instantly went red and you were locked down. You couldn't get on the subway, you couldn't go anywhere, you couldn't leave your house. If you then returned home to your housing block with a red QR, your entire housing block was shut down. And then
everything's getting shut down a lot faster then.
Yeah, and you're getting no warning about it. So I didn't get a red QR code. My QR code was green the entire time, but one of the teachers in my school, their QR code turned red, and because of that, his whole building got shut down. He couldn't come into work. He had to work remotely. But it happened to enough housing blocks in my city that at midnight one night, I came home from work, like I go in my bed, at midnight, they put the whole city on lockdown. And I had no idea until I woke up the next day, got dressed, went to go to work, and there's armed guards outside my house. Like, I can't leave.
How long had you been living in China at this point?
Just coming up for 9 years.
Yeah, because I mean, I think what Yeah, what people I think don't realize, like when you're always like telling the story, like at this point, like this is your home. Like you have lived there for 9 years. You
In
really
that
until, yeah,
in that house for 7, so
yeah,
my whole life was in there, like
yeah.
everything.
And then how did you make the decision finally that you were like, okay, I'm gonna get out of here?
I think when everything started becoming more and more dystopian, like I think I could deal with being in the house well enough. I could deal with the government rations because we couldn't go out for food, so you just got what got delivered. I could deal with that. That was fine. I was in my house. I could even put up with the fact that I went back to my house from work that night with only like 5 cigarettes in a carton and no way of getting more. And I could even deal with that despite being really irritable. But I think when it started being like drones were flying past your window with megaphones telling you in Chinese that it is your floor's time to go for your government appointed COVID test, please go down the stairs. I think when stuff like that started happening, the constant queues for COVID tests, I had to be tested every day. And a little drone would fly past your window and announce that it was your block and your floor's time to go for the test. And I think that's when I started realizing that, I always kind of knew China had that power, but it was never used on me.
Well, I mean, that's the thing though, really, like living there, I feel like there was like a golden age where like, if you weren't anti-government, you could decide. There were days where we woke up one morning and you were like, I want to go buy a moped. And then we took out cash and we went and bought a moped, no license needed. We paid a guy and then we just rolled off with it. No like fancy, like there was no like approvals process for some things that made life really fun there. And then, but like, yeah, we're not like going to like an anti-government protest. So like, I feel like,
Yeah.
yeah, it just, the vibe changes when they can all of a sudden force you to go downstairs every day and like do this COVID test.
Yeah. I think the thing is, though, like when I talk about this, because like people always ask me about it, and because it seems so normal to me, but not to like a whole bunch of other people. So like a lot of people ask me about it, and then they're like, oh my God, that sounds terrible. Like you must have hated it. And I'm like, honestly, no, I think it's not some big dramatic thing where I went stir crazy. Well, maybe a little bit, but like a lot of it is just that I was kind of fed up and I was just like, right, I've had enough of this now. It's not that I hate China. I lived there for 9 years. Can't really say you hate something if you live through it for 9 years, right? I'm not anti-China or anything. I mean, I currently study Chinese at university. I do really like it. It's just that situation. It was just, no, I'm just going to nope out of this. And it was really hard to not nope out of it. Like, I had to take a train because I was scared of the airports getting locked down because we had just been released. But a lot of my Chinese friends were saying, I think they're going to put the lockdown back down in a few days because the cases are going up again. They're going up again. And so I called into work and I was just like, you know how I said I was handing in my 1 month notice? Yeah, I'm on a train right now. I'm out of here. Like, I can't risk being locked down for another 3 months. So I got a train and I stayed in an airport near the hotel in Shanghai. But to get on the plane, they needed 3 consecutive days of negative COVID tests, which you could get in China. Really easy, just anywhere in the corner. They had booths set up for it. But they had to be in English and Chinese because I was getting on an English plane. So I had to go to the international hospital and pay a whole bunch of money for them to get international tests done, which had to be printed and given to me and emailed to me in English and Chinese. But I wasn't allowed in a taxi, a bus, or a subway because all of my QR codes were from my previous city and I didn't have a permanent residence in Shanghai because I was staying at a hotel. So I had to take public bicycles and bike for about an hour every day there and an hour back for 3 days in a row to get
I remember texting you at this time and you were like, I've gone through every option. I'm not allowed on a bus because I don't have the right permit. I'm not allowed in a taxi. And then I was like, how are you going to actually get to the airport with all your stuff? And didn't like someone from the hotel finally just drive you? Or how did that? Because you weren't even allowed to get like a Didi, which is like Chinese Uber.
Yeah, they wouldn't accept my phone for it. So the lady at reception, because I had been in this hotel for a week waiting for this flight because there was only one flight a week from China to Amsterdam where I was swapping. And eventually she was like, it only costs 40 yuan to get to the airport from here. Just give me the money and I'll book it on my phone through my DD, and they'll just take it out of my account. When a guy rolls up, I'm just going to shove all your stuff and shove you into the car and tell him to go. So this lady was super nice though. She gave me like a full handful of like face masks. She gave me a big box of like alcohol wipes, and she sent me off to the airport. My flight left at 9 at the airport, 8 a.m. because there was word of Shanghai getting locked down. She's like, if you get locked down in the airport, there's nothing they can do. You're already in the airport. They'll put you on the plane. If they lock down the airport before you get there, what are you going to do? So she sent me at like 8 in the morning to the airport, and I just had to sit there for 12 hours.
Honestly, better to sit there for 12 hours than you're like waiting on the one flight a week and you've like had like you went on a crazy journey to get out of China. Like it's just the whole thing. I remember like it playing out at the time and just being like, this is absolutely insane, because that's when also like I was still in the US then, and the world in general, I was traveling more because like everything was opened up again for us. But like China, what people don't realize, I think, had like closed back down. Like the timelines were completely different.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I felt so vindicated in it because 2 days after I left my city got locked down. And 2 days after I got on that plane, Shanghai got locked down. There was a lot of stuff. It even made it to the British news about people getting locked inside an IKEA because someone in IKEA had a red COVID, and they locked the whole building, and they ended up like breaking the fire exits and leaving. Like it was a whole article on the BBC about it. And I was like, I'm so glad that I got out when I did, because like my fear would have been like stuck there, no work, no income, spending money in a hotel, spending more money on a flight, just waiting to be able to leave.
And you have like 10 years of your life with you as well. It's not just like, oh, let's pack up and go. I think because like when I remember like telling people about your situation, and they're like, you should just like leave. And I was like, you can't just pack up your life like that, you know? Like, and at that point too, what I want to kind of segue into is like, your Chinese was quite good. Like my Chinese was always pretty like, you know, I could do all the basics and like get by, but like it was, you know, you were like talking to the granny on the street, and like just you had loads of friends who were Chinese, and like you were speaking the language.
Yeah, I mean, I think that has helped me out in more ways than I can think. Like, would that lady at the airport hotel have been so endeared to me if I was just trying to communicate in English? Because I did everything not just in Chinese, but in like Xianese, because she was from Xi'an. So I was like really going for it, like putting the on the end of every word, and like just chatting to her about like, do you like going to the bell tower? I like going to the bell tower. I like sitting in the Starbucks nearby and watching the tourists. Like, I was having a great chat with her. Also, there wasn't that many people for me to chat with on a daily basis when I'm locked in the hotel. So, but yeah, no, I think my Chinese was, I wouldn't say great, but definitely better than your average foreigner living there.
I think you're not doing yourself a service there. You were talking to people, having chats. Like, yeah, okay, the average foreigner, I feel like, who lives in China, like, doesn't speak any Chinese. Like, I would say I was better than the average foreigner. You were actually talking to people, like, and I think that's so important in any country that you go to. Like, you have to put forth the effort to, like, speak the language of the place that you're living. But especially if you're living there for, you know, a decade, then that's quite different.
Yeah.
But what happened? So when you got back to the UK finally, though, you were like, okay, I have this Chinese, I'm going to put it to use. And then what happened there?
So I have like fairly decent Chinese, right? And I thought, you know, there must be somebody out there that needs me to speak Chinese, but I'm not like, I'm not going to just walk in and be like, yo, give me the job. So I was like, I'll look for some volunteering places. You know, maybe there's some people out there, like, I don't know, who just need someone who can speak Chinese, like at a moment's notice, to help with like incidents or something. So like I tried calling up like a bunch of places, you know, like incident report places and like A&E stuff, just being like, yo, if you're ever in a pinch, like I'll put my number down if you need someone to come and help with this sort of thing, just to get like experience or whatever. Volunteering, free, call me anytime. Great, yeah, perfect, we really need that. Just send us your Chinese degree.
And you were like, my degree is from life. I spent 10 years learning this language.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I feel like that's the full circle moment that brought you back to university, would you say? Or is that, I mean, that's a simplification. now, you're in the career change, but also China is still kind of shaping you.
Yeah, I mean, I study Chinese at the University of Aberdeen in Scotland, one of only a handful of universities in Scotland, and I mean literally like a handful, like 5, that teach Chinese. But my other options were St Andrews or 3 in Edinburgh.
And we
And
all
I
know how you feel.
Edinburgh. So yeah, I'm
What do you
here at
have against
Aberdeen.
Edinburgh? Why do you dislike Edinburgh so much?
Well, I'm from Glasgow, so that anything you would need, you could find in Glasgow. You do not need to go to Edinburgh. It's full of people who have too much free time to get to the place they need to be. I never have enough of that. I need to be where I need to be quickly, and if you're walking like this in front of me, I don't have time for it.
Fair. That was also, I mean, we always had the joke that like we would walk somewhere together and you're like, oh my God, you walk so slowly. I'm like, this is just my pace. And then once I had the flu and you were like, I didn't know you could go any slower. And I was like, this is sick, Emily pace. You have to let me be.
Yeah, I think I'm a lot more chill now. Like, I walk slower now and sort of enjoy things around me. But I feel like in Edinburgh, there's nothing I want to enjoy, so I just want to get out as quickly as possible.
I always try to explain to people your disdain for Edinburgh because I feel like internationally it's like renowned as one of the most like beautiful, tourist friendly, lovely cities in Scotland to go to. And I'm like, I have this one Scottish friend who hates it.
Yeah, that's why when you came to visit, I enlisted the help of my parents to be enthusiastic for the day because I knew I couldn't be.
Yeah, and I loved it. I feel like I got to enjoy Edinburgh and you put on a brave face pretending that you were having a nice day, which I think you secretly were, but
Well, it's all about the company, I suppose.
okay. So to avoid staying in Edinburgh, you were like, I am gonna go to Aberdeen, where I've also spent a month and I had a lovely time. And
Oh,
honestly, it's because I have this guy in my office who is from Aberdeen. And we were just talking one day and he was like, he said that he was from Aberdeen. I was like, oh, I stayed there for a month. And he was like, you stayed in Aberdeen for a month? Like, surely that's the wrong city. And I was like, the Silver City. He was like, nobody calls it that. And I was like, that's what my friend says. Because on all the tourist stuff, it says it's the Silver City, but you're like, maybe the Granite City. But yeah, it's not.
yeah. Yeah, Aberdeen's actually like a surprisingly nice place. I would never consider it because it's so far north, but it's got everything that Glasgow has, just smaller, I suppose.
Mhm.
It's really nice. The whole city is pretty much just the uni. There's 2 of them, and they're at each end of the city, and that's kind of it, really. But it's really nice here, and they offer Chinese, which I wanted to do, but they don't offer it as a single degree. You've got to take it as a joint honours with something else, most commonly law or business, both of which make me want to vomit.
So
So
you
I
chose
linguistic.
linguistics. So before we dive into, because I've actually learned a lot about linguistics because of you, but what I want to dive into first is, because I think it's hilarious, because you already have a degree, a master's, right, from the
Yeah.
University of Glasgow, and you were like, all right, I need to get a real certification for this Chinese because this volunteer position was like, no, you can't work with us. And you were like, rude. So then you go back to university, but you are, at this point in time in your 30s, what is it like being the old lady in the room with all the kiddos?
It's quite weird. You know how there's that whole thing on the internet about millennials age differently from Gen Zers?
Mhm.
So there's a lot of kids in the class that look to me similar age to me, and they're like 20. And I'm like, okay. And then the Gen Zers in my class, they didn't know how old I was until I told them. And they were like, when I told them, they were like, that's shocking, but it makes sense a lot of the weird things that you say. We thought that you were just a bit strange. And I'm like, no. But, some of them are like, they're really nice people. A lot of them are really nice. But collectively, I've noticed they're super high strung. Like, they don't relax.
So, like, what can you give an example?
Well, like, for me, I'm like, okay, a lot of these courses, I've had time to sit and think about it actually, because this is something I've thought about a lot. I don't actually know if they're high strung or not. Maybe I was that way when I first went to uni. So in Scotland, you can rock up to uni when you're 17 because of the way our school year works. There's like a 2-month period that you would be 17 when you go into university. It's just how it is. So you have like some really young kids rocking up doing like adult level studying. And I think it like fries their brain. And like maybe I was also super high strung the first time around, and now I'm just like, I have a more developed adult brain that just deals with situations differently. Because right now, all I can think about is how easy these classes are. They're not easy, there's a lot of learning going into it, but it's like I've been given the tools and clear instructions and a time frame. I just have to produce the output. It's a simple equation, guys. Just do
Yeah.
it.
But
And
I
all
often
these
think,
kids are like, just you have the information, you have clear instructions, you have a time frame, produce the output.
also, I think about this quite a lot. Like, because I was just like traveling and flouncing around for ages before I started in 2017 was when I was like, okay, I should probably start working on like something that isn't, I needed like some sort of focus. So then that's kind of when I switched into like tech and marketing and all of like that area of things. But
Sure.
like, I think about this all the time. I'm like, man, I went to a university that was like quite good and I I wasted it, like I was there for 4 years. I went to the classes that I had to go to, but I didn't, like if I went back now in my 30s, I would be like intentionally choosing classes. I'd be researching the professors. I'd be like, I think I would legitimately enjoy going to university full time now. And so, like, in a way, when you were like, no, I'm going to enroll, I'm going to go get another degree, I was kind of like, dang, that's cool. I feel like no, I'm serious. Cause like once you're older, I feel like once you have like some subset of life experience or like you've done university before, then you get to go back and then all of a sudden you just get to like be interested.
Yeah. I mean, get that. I so do. It's a little bit different for me
Mhm.
because my first degree was just what I was interested in. It was like my special interest at the time, but that comes from a really unique place of privilege that I am really grateful for, and that is that I'm Scottish and
Yeah.
my degree is free and my living expenses are also funded by the Scottish government. So if I had to pay for a degree, I can imagine feeling some sort of guilt and regret later over what I chose because it was ultimately useless. But because it was free, and I mean, honestly, if we had to pay, I probably would never have been able to afford university anyway. So just out of that, like, I can only really appreciate and love my first time at uni for what it was, and that was like a great opportunity to study things that I really enjoyed. But now also I'm very privileged in that I'm Scottish, and so my degree at a Scottish university is a fraction of what anyone else in the world would pay for a degree. Even though I'm paying for this one, the fees are very, very low for me.
Mhm.
So I do get to this great joy of coming back again, doing something which I find useful this time, being Chinese, but also taking linguistics and finding out that I actually kind of really enjoy it. So, and just having
Yeah.
a really good time while I'm here. Like, I love studying, so this is just a great excuse to do that.
I mean, yeah, but also I feel like that's one of your best qualities though, is like when we go to a museum, like you came to visit me in Berlin. I think this was in July.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, we'll go see. I think Nefertiti's head was at like the Neues Museum. And I've been before. So I was kind of like, well, but then you get there and you're like, you don't even have like background on this specific museum because you wanted to go to the Pergamon, but that was closed for renovation. So we go to the Neues Museum and you're like walking around, you're like, this is this, and this is this battle, and this is what's happening here. And that was all like some classic stuff. And it like made it like far more engaging for me.
Yeah.
But then, yeah, I don't know. So I feel like now it's just like so previously you had all this classic knowledge and now you have all this linguistics knowledge on top of it. And then you
Yeah.
may or may not use Chinese in the future, but who knows? But yeah,
Yeah. And I'm
it's all
still
kind of
coming at
shaping.
you with like 10-minute WhatsApp TED Talks about linguistic stuff that I think you might find interesting.
I mean, I love it because also I do think it's particularly interesting with the Scottish accent because, like, right now you're speaking to me in your Scottish accent for people who aren't Scottish. So, like, you can kind of hear it, but like, you obviously speak very differently, like, when you're talking to your mom and like when you're talking to your dad. And I mean, even when I was visiting your parents in Scotland, like now, because I've been, I went to Thailand with you and your mom, I'm like, okay, I hear you. I understand you, Caroline. We're good. So like with your dad, like the two of us would just have the back and forth, and you and your mom would just be like laughing at like how I was like, I don't understand. I was like, Jimmy, what are you saying? I don't know what you're saying. You're speaking English and I don't understand you. And like you and your mom were just like pissing yourselves. And I was like, okay, help. Come on.
Yeah, my dad, it's funny to me that like my dad literally doesn't have a grasp on English as a language. He has a grasp on Scots, but not English. If he has to communicate with anyone who can't really understand him, he has no way of like, grading his language for them. He just doesn't have that capability. Quite funny, actually.
I enjoyed it. I feel like I learned a lot. But also it happened too when I was like, because I wanted to go to like a pub in your hometown, like outside of Glasgow, and like small, like not like the big city anymore. And I remember you were like, I don't want to go to the pub, and I was like, I want to go to the pub. And then finally, your mom and dad were like, take her to the pub, and we went, and I couldn't understand anyone there either, and it was like so wild to me. I was like, this is the same language, and I get nothing. And then as we left, you were like, that guy was speaking with his like posh accent, so you could understand him, and I was like, I still got nothing.
He was trying so hard to like speak English to you. It was so funny. I
Yeah,
think
but
like
to me, I was like, I don't understand anything that's happening right now.
I think like when I first rocked up to university at Glasgow the first time, all of the kids in my class were international students. There were no other Scottish students beside me, and no one could understand me. So, like, I lost my accent. Well, I lost that type of accent quite quickly. I mean, I do go back into it if I'm, like, speaking to my mum and dad or my friends from back home, but usually around other people, this is kind of what comes out, so...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, still the famous story of you at that party in Chicago when like White Claw had just come
Oh,
out. I love this story so much because White Claw had just come out and you were super excited about it because they didn't have it in China, and then you had heard about it and you like wanted to like try it in the US. And then I forget, you like asked some girl, you were like, hey, could you pass me that White Claw? And like she was just some random girl at the house party and she's like, oh, we think we're British now. And you were like, I'm from fucking Glasgow.
yeah, I remember like seeing you out of the corner of my eye just looking like, don't. And I'm like, I was just trying to be polite. I didn't want to have to push past her.
Well, she didn't know that she had irritated you on two counts. It was one, she said you were speaking with a British accent, and then two, the fact that she thought that you were like maybe American, like trying to be British or something. I don't know. It was just like so many layers. I was like, we gotta go.
Yeah, that was a wild time. But yeah, it's crazy. I have a couple of people in my linguistics class that specifically do like Scottish linguistics, like Scots, and there's one in my class and he's like a very big advocate of like the Scottish is a language, which I mean is provable, like in linguistics terms, but he will not speak English in class. He will only speak Scots, very broad Scots. So imagine like being asked a question in like, how does blah 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 make you feel, and you've got a class of, let's be honest, mostly English people because it's cheaper to come to Scotland for university, and international students, so very few actually Scottish students like in the classroom. You've asked this question and then all you suddenly get is, well, I think if you're doing this then it's probably going to be this way, but if you're not doing it like that and I think maybe you want to be doing something a wee bit different, you can. And all of these international students are just looking at him like,
What?
but
Do
the
you think?
lecturers are Scottish, so they understand. And they
Mhm.
know that he will, on principle, not speak English to answer questions. So no one really says anything about it. But I did have to sit in a class and be the only person that could understand his 20-minute presentation that he gave, which I felt a bit bad for.
I kind of, I don't know. I don't want to like take a side because on one hand, like I feel super like lucky that English is like the lingua franca of the world, and that, usually 9 times out of 10, I don't have to pull another language out of my hat. I get to just use my own, which is just sheer dumb luck that I get to talk to as many people as I do. But would you say like the guy who only uses like Scottish in class, is that similar to like, I don't know, you hear that happening at like universities in Barcelona where students and professors are like, no, we're speaking in Catalan here. Like, would you say that that's like a similar kind of thing, or is that like totally different? That might have been a really ignorant question. I don't know.
No, I think it's like a really on-point question, like, because it is in many ways quite a similar issue. I think that it's really great of him that he uses Scots in an academic context, and his language isn't stupid. He's using like a lot of very academic words, just the Scots version of them, or with a very Scottish pronunciation of them. And I think that's great. I mostly just feel for the people who can't follow on with him, because obviously working as an ESL teacher, I kind of want everyone to understand what's going on. So when I see someone not understanding, it's my kind of like second instinct to like rephrase or grade what's being said for them. And I do this like in English, and I do it in Chinese as well, with like, we have a Chinese teacher who knows my ability in Chinese and will just speak rapid fire, but the other kids in the class can't follow on. So sometimes I have to paraphrase what the teacher said to me to them. This is like in private time, at like, not private time, but like at the start of class or at the end of class when it's not official teaching hours. But I don't want them to feel left out, so I like paraphrase it for them. But that's just something I feel. So it's like a feeling I get whenever this kid uses only Scottish, that like, you've got a lot of really important things to say, and I feel strongly for your message that you're making. I just feel bad that the other kids aren't really following your point is all.
Yeah, but I do think it's kind of a superpower that like living abroad for so many years kind of gave us, because also I remember like having a disagreement with one of my very close friends because she was like, we were talking, I wanted her to switch to German more often. And her perspective was more excited that she wanted to switch to German, that we were finally going to make the switch. And then she was like talking so fast because she just didn't know, and she wasn't used to like slowing down her language or saying things differently. It was either super fast or switch to English. And I was like, no, there's a middle ground we have to work on together. But it was like this weird back and forth while we were trying to figure that out. And she was like, you don't know what it's like. Like, it's very stressful when I always have to speak English with a native speaker. And I was like, no, I do truly like empathize with that, because I have learned other languages, and I do understand what it's like when you have to speak another language with a native speaker and how stressful it is. But what she didn't realize, though, is like, and now I would say, because we've been friends for a couple of years, now I don't really change my language. But like when we first started our friendship, like I still had to go through the mental effort of like grading my language. And that's why we became friends, is because I was able to like change my own speech to like make it easier and better for her to understand. So I'm grateful for the time spent abroad working with people from lots of different language backgrounds, that I can do that. I think that's really important.
I think that's like one thing about the best skill ever from teaching ESL to children, is that I feel I could go to any country in the world and at least be able to get food and water, because I have those miming skills on lock.
Yeah, true. But how, are there any like specific things that you've learned like through linguistics that have like surprised you, or like any, whether it's about like Scottish or about just other dialects? I feel like you fill me in, like I'll get a fun message and it's like, I learned something new about German, and I'm like, all right, let's go, because that's my language that I'm trying to learn right now.
So my big area of interest for linguistics, because linguistics is gigantic. Linguistics is a mega discipline, because you have linguistics, comma, well, not comma, dash, and then a whole other entire academic profession. So like linguistic anthropology, linguistic psychology, linguistic, like blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on and on. So like my two big areas are sociolinguistics. So that's looking at the sociology of linguistics, and we react as people to certain words, sounds, accents, language, all of that sort of stuff. So that's really interesting to me. But I will say it can become quite depressing.
Like what?
It is unfortunately one of the areas of linguistics where you spend more time than not learning about other people's preconceived notions and prejudices towards specific accent groups, and the way they treat them. So in first year, we had to do an entire sociolinguistic section where we learned about different experiments that had been done. For instance, people trying to rent accommodation in the US, and how often people would be denied even viewing an apartment if the person on the phone perceived them to be a speaker of African American vernacular English. So there's a lot of social injustice that will really, I don't know, for me, just fill me with rage in these classes. But understanding the way people think is half the battle in improving the way we deal with it and getting rid of these sort of problems. But it is very interesting. And then the other part that I really like is also related to it is like dialectology. So people's accents and being able to identify it to a region, such as when me and Heather played Guess the Accent.
Yeah, so at parties, after a few drinks, I feel like that is always what the night turns into, is especially for the UK region. But also you're getting better at it with the US now too. You'll like
Getting a little
corner
bit
someone at
more.
a party and you're like asking them very specific questions and getting them to say specific words so that you can be like, you are from Somerset.
Yeah, it's a fun little game for me, like, because I think people's accents are just such a fun and unique part of their existence. Because there's no such thing as not having an accent, ever.
Right.
And it's how you express that accent or choose to hide it can tell you a lot about that person. And it's just fun to, like, do, like, try and guess where someone's from like, their accent. And so I make a little game of it when I meet new people. I'll be like, don't tell me where you're from. I'm going to try and guess based on the things you say.
I mean, I watched you go 8 for 8. It was very impressive. I was like, all right, cool.
I get better at it. Like, the more I learn in this course, like, I seem to get better and better at it. So
Yeah.
I might pursue something to do with dialectology moving forward. I don't know. I don't know what sort of jobs there are for that, but might be quite fun. Maybe I'll make a
That's a
Yorkshire Surrey.
I mean, it was interesting too, because I did the first episode because I'm using you guys as kind of my guinea pigs for this creative endeavor, because I promised myself in 2025 I would do something creative. So I was like editing. I was like, podcast sounds manageable. But yeah, so Heather was talking about her job and she was like, this is what I will work here until I retire. Like, this is my dream job. And I was like, that's insane to me, because also I feel like, yeah, I mean, I work in tech, so like I'm moving. It's just normal to switch jobs every couple of years. Like, that happens. Like, I'm not seeking it out. That's just kind of how the industry goes. But yeah, it's kind of like, do you ever feel like anxious about the future, or are you just kind of like, we'll figure it out?
All the goddamn time, like, know that I really like studying, but I have a real problem seeing the practical application of what I'm doing. For me, I'm learning for learning's sake. That's what I enjoy. I enjoy just, like, hoarding knowledge like a dragon, just keeping it. Like, I know all the things, but when it comes to what would I ever do with it, I honestly don't know. Right now, realistically, I'm looking at either a master's after this degree or a PhD. And a lot of that really hinges on how my scores for next semester go. Basically, if your scores are high enough, they'll let you forego a master's and walk straight into a PhD program. So I'm waiting to see. If not, I would probably just do a master's anyway.
Okay.
Unless something strikes me like, yo, you could do this job and it would be great. But I don't really know.
Honestly, that's also kind of just like part of the fun, because it's like, who says that you have to do anything specific? It's kind of like, if going to school and hoarding knowledge is like what you enjoy, and like you get to live in, granted, I know like this round isn't free, you are financing it yourself, but like if you are able to, because we always joke that you love McDonald's so much, and I never went to McDonald's, but like, so like when you were like, guess what, I got a job at McDonald's, I was like, it is a canon event, like it had to happen on this timeline, like.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, how has that been? Like, because yeah, you kind of went from like, you're like the business director of like this for-profit school, and then you come back and now you're like a student again with a bunch of kids who we've already established are, pretty cool. But yeah, and then working at McDonald's. So you're like, what is it like? Like, I feel like you're quite happy there though.
Oh, yeah. So I had to explain it because, like, I didn't go in telling anyone anything about myself when I started at McDonald's. And I have a little bit of an issue kind of multitasking with things. I mean, you might have seen me like stop on the street to like text instead of text and walk. Like, I don't have great motor skills when it comes to doing stuff and like talking or like thinking. So I don't speak a lot at work because I just like do my job that I'm paid there to be. So slowly over the like year and a half that I've worked there, it's almost 2 years now, I've like given off little bits of information about myself slowly. And one of the things they asked, one of the managers who I'm quite friendly with asked, they was like, if you were director of an entire school, I mean, what did you do? And I was like, accounting, finance, timetabling, class scheduling, staff meetings, staff training, management, plenaries. I did everything. And he was like, and now you just work here. And I'm like, yeah, it's great. He's like, what do you mean? And I was like, you're young, so it's hard for you to understand, but I was a corporate millennial for 10 years and it killed my soul. Now I get to come here and I just turn off my brain. It's like being asleep to me. This is as relaxed as I get.
Because you're getting to study what you want to study, and then, you're relaxed kind of at work. And then I was talking to a friend about this. I feel like an added benefit too is it's not like, I don't know, because if I were to like do something freelance, then it's still like I'm sitting at a computer screen, like typing, because I'd still be using my own skill set. Whereas I feel like, at least for you, it's like you're in a classroom, and that's very separate from going to work that pays the bills.
Work is like, it's a very specific set of like motor skills that you need to use. There are like 5 areas, you master the area, and then it just becomes like second nature. It's like robotic. It's just a sequence of like really set out like things that you do in that area. And then you just don't ever look at the clock, because the clock will go slower the more you look at it. You just do it until your boss says it's time to go home. And that's it. It's great. Like, I honestly just turn off my head.
I was talking to a colleague, and I forget how it came up. It was like, oh yeah, my friend Zane's visiting. And anyway, they work at McDonald's, and he was like, oh, like McDonald's corporate in Berlin. And I was like, no, like McDonald's crew member in Aberdeen. And he was just kind of like, what? Like crew member? I was like, yeah, crew member. I was like, they love it. So that was just like quite funny. But then, yeah, immediately after, he like didn't miss a beat. He's like, so why is the McFlurry machine always broken? And I was like, I can ask.
I have to say though, like dealing with the McFlurry machine issue is the bane of my life. Like 2 days ago, I was on drive-through at window 1 taking orders. So it's like, again, you just turn off your head. It's like, hi, welcome to McDonald's. Are you using the McDonald's app today? That's not a problem. What can I get for you? Would you like that as a meal? What's your drink with that? It's like so easy. Like, I don't even need to read the till anymore. I just know where things are from like sequence.
What's the linguistic science behind your customer service voice?
I don't know. It's the same voice I do as when I get startled. I also apparently, I never noticed I did it, but you get these things called C-stats, which are like on your receipt from McDonald's, there's a little code. If you go there and input some information about how we did as our providing a service, you'll get a discounted meal next time you come in store. It's kind of like our way of buying data from you. It's like, we'll give you a cheap meal if you give us feedback on how we did. But you can also, if you think you received excellent service, put a crew member's name on, which is why we have our like name tags. But obviously in drive-thru, people don't really pay attention to us, especially at window 1. Window 2, where you get given your food and your receipt, you might be more likely to put their name down, because sometimes the crew members will put like their name in a smiley face. So like you can fill in the details, because for us as crew, if you get a certain number of C-stats in a month, you'll get extra points for your lunch. So we all get 4 points for lunch, but if you have good C-stats, you could get 5, which means you could get a whole extra McFlurry for yourself.
If the machine's not broken.
If the machine's not broken. But we got a C-stat, and I didn't know that this was a thing that people were talking about. But the C-stat had just said, received excellent service from the person taking the drive-thru order. Hearing someone say okie dokie has been the highlight of my day. So apparently the managers were going around trying to figure out who had been saying okie dokie at the window. And it was me.
Oh, embarrassing.
So it was like, okie dokie, you can head round to the first window. Thank you.
There has to be something scientifically happening in your brain. I feel like you don't say okie dokie in your day-to-day life. So I feel like the brain switched off or something.
I don't know. Maybe I just use my teaching voice and I naturally assume people at the drive-thru window are small children learning English. It's the same voice.
But very easy to understand.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like you've always got to speak clearly, because like you can't see them to talk to them. It's like over a headset.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But yeah, my customer service voice is a bit weird. I have noticed that it's quite Scottish now, even though it sounds English. It'll be like Englishy, 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 2 random words of Scottish, Englishy, Englishy. Because I always start with, oh, hiya, which I think is very Scottish, a very Scottish thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, what is like the most annoying thing that tourists visiting Scotland do? Like, as far as like...
Tell me more about how you're 1/2 Scottish. I'm really interested.
Okay, the meanest thing you did to me was when we were at Edinburgh Castle, and you were like, "Hey, Emily, do you want to go like see where your family's from?" And I was like, "What? Like, I don't have any Scottish heritage." And like, I look over and it's just like a line of Americans like looking at their Scottish heritage in Edinburgh. And then I turn back to you like, "Fuck you." And then I turn over and you're just like, "You might be 1/18th Scottish." And I was like, "Get out of here." Like, it
Yeah,
was
no,
so mean.
I find that the most annoying thing personally because I don't know, with a lot of what's going on with like Brexit and Scottish secession, independence, we have a lot of people who were not born in Scotland, have no parents who were born in Scotland, but have lived here for a very long time. I work with a lot of them in McDonald's. They're Scottish because they live here and they experience what it's like to live in Scotland daily. It's not blood, it's not an ancestry, it's not a passport. It's waking up every day and not needing to look out the window to know it's raining. That's Scottish. That's what it is to be Scottish. So tell me more about how you're 18th Scotch. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear it.
But it's nice to know, do you think a lot of people share that mentality in Scotland? Like, you are Scotland if you live here and you feel it and you day to day have the life experience? Or do you think a lot of people are kind of like, Scottish has its own identity and its own language and its own, like, what does it mean to be?
I actually think a lot of people think the same way as me. If our votes on independence and Brexit and all of the speech around that time is anything to go by, I think Scotland recognises that anyone who wants to live here, like live their life here and can contribute to our way of life and our economy and stuff, they're Scottish.
Yeah.
They're paying taxes for our country. We're in this together. As everyone was so fond of telling me in my first city in China, Scotland sounds like a socialist paradise. And I mean, it's not a paradise, but it's definitely, I would hope, slightly more socialist than most places in the UK. And I'm really proud of that.
Yeah.
Not that there's a lot to be proud of living in the UK, I don't think.
That's a whole other can of worms.
Right.
But also, I mean, I do remember like during the World Cup that was here in Germany last summer.
Oh, the
It was
Euros.
very much, sorry, yeah, the Euros. That's so American of me. I don't even know which football match it was. But I'm saying football, not soccer. So, but yeah, like that was like so funny too, where it was like all the England. I feel like in general, like the vibe for the England fans was like, but like the vibe for Scottish fans was like, join up, welcome, like come along, have a beer.
I really like that one video of like the guy like dropping bottles of beer out of his window to the fans.
Yeah, I think that was, I don't remember where that was. Yeah, because I think, yeah, I sent you that video and it was like this old man, like, but they're like glass bottles. And I was like, this is the most like German Scottish thing I've ever seen in my life, where it's just like a bunch of Scotland fans, like, we're ready to catch it. And this German guy, like, gingerly dropping bottles down to him.
Yup.
Not one beer was filled.
Got really good catching skills, I think. Yeah, no, I think Scotland's a pretty cool place. But yeah, like, I don't mind tourists. I really don't. I prefer not to be where they are. I don't have anything about them being there. I just don't also want to be over there.
That's why you secretly want them at Edinburgh.
Yeah, I actually kind of like that Edinburgh's the capital because it means that all the tourists are there and not where I am.
But yeah, I had a lovely time in Aberdeen. I don't know that it's like a vacation destination because it is quite far north, but yeah, I really had a lovely month. And it was, yeah, because that was before I moved to Germany, so I wasn't accustomed to like it being dark at 3 p.m. But yeah, those 3 hours of daylight were really nice while they left.
We did get to do a lot of really cool stuff when you were up visiting as well, which was super nice.
Yeah, I had a really good trip. Yeah, because we went to Glasgow, we went to Edinburgh, we went all around Aberdeen. We did like a lot. We went so many places. But yeah, that was a really good month.
Still, it wasn't enough time. You need to come back. There's more to see.
I do.
Come in the summer. I think this year it's the first 2 weeks of June. And then you'll have a lovely time.
Where it's nice for 2 whole weeks.
Maybe. We're still waiting to find it.
Yeah. Fair enough. Okay, my last question is, what's the weirdest food combination that you've ever made for yourself?
At McDonald's or
at
just
McDonald's? No, at McDonald's.
Never finds out about this and gets me into trouble, but I like. So
you're not allowed to.
Yeah, you're not allowed to make anything that isn't on the menu.
Okay. So like, let's revise the question then. In theory, if you were to make a combo of whatever you wanted to make, what would it be?
Well, in that case,
theoretically.
theoretically, I would make something I call the Big Mac wrap. So you know how you have the McDonald's wraps, and there's like chili, sweet chili, barbecue, katsu curry, and I think there's like a Caesar dressing one. But if you put Big Mac sauce in it instead, and then everything you would get in a Big Mac, so like lettuce and cheese, and then you put the chicken strips inside it and roll it all up and eat it, I think that's pretty high quality, personally. But like, yeah,
Not
just
that you've ever done it before.
not that I've ever done. For me, it would be essentially adding Big Mac sauce to anything. I think Big Mac sauce really makes the difference.
Nice.
Yeah,
Pretty solid.
my absolute favorite. When I make my own Big Macs for like break, if it's like I work overnight sometimes because our McDonald's is 24-hour. So like dead of night, like and I'm just getting my break, I'll make my own meal because I'm the only person that can run the kitchen at that time. So I'll make my own break and I'll just be like, extra Big Mac sauce on everything.
Nice. If only you could just like take a bucket of it home or something.
Oh, so good. But I don't know. I think it's got like gherkins or something like in the sauce, so I think it would go out of date before I could eat it all.
Yeah, okay.
In a day, the store will go through like the tubes that go into the gun, which are about this big. We'll go through about 11 in a day.
Oh my God. That's like 11 liters of Big Mac sauce.
Yeah, about that. As for like
Okay.
for chicken sandwiches, they get a special vegan mayonnaise that goes on it.
Uh-huh.
They'll go through about 5 liters. Chicken mayos, which get full mayonnaise, they'll go through about 8 liters. And right now we have the Philly cheese stack, which has like the American cheese, like nacho cheese sauce.
Yeah.
So we're
Big
currently
cheese.
going through about 8 liters of that a day as well. But Big Mac sauce is definitely the one that goes through the most. But I think it's because also the Big Mac gets 2 clicks of it because it has 2 buns.
Yeah. So it goes through double
twice as fast, yeah.
All right.
And we'll probably go through about 6 kilos of lettuce in a day. Fun fact.
That is crazy. Fun fact. That is a fun fact. I think that's a good fun fact to end on, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for joining me today as we figure out how this works. Yeah, I put together little pieces.
No problem.
Yeah,
It's
I don't
been
know.
fun.
Yeah, it has been fun. Was there anything that you wanted to talk about that you didn't get to bring up?
No, honestly, I didn't know what was going to be happening on this podcast. I'm just here for good times and vibes.
Nice.
So, yeah. It's also nice to kind of reminisce about things that I had forgot were things as well. So,
yeah. I feel like there's always so many avenues we can go down. Yeah, I was literally telling someone the other day about like when you visited Berlin and we were going under like Brandenburger Tor, and you were like, "That's the Battle of Perseus." Is that what it was? I don't remember.
Oh, it was the centaurs versus someone.
Is that Perseus or was that so? I don't remember,
No,
but you knew exactly.
I know what it is.
Okay. What is it? Now you don't remember.
No, I'm fairly sure it's the centaurs versus the pygmies, but I just didn't want to say that because I don't know if that's a word that still gets used for them. That's just what I learned as at uni.
Yeah, I don't know.
So
I just remember being like, "What?" And then you're like telling me about this battle, and then I was like, "No way, you just made
the
that up."
centaurs came and they took all the women, and then everyone got really mad about it, and then they were fighting.
I remember like we're like walking under this thing now, and I'm like, "Man, I've taken like 8 visitors under this. There's whenever someone comes to Berlin, they want to see that landmark." I was like, I had no idea what this was, and you were just like, "Let me drop some knowledge."
I couldn't see it the first time because there was a giant football screen in front of it.
That's true. Yeah. But the fact that you knew what it was, pretty solid.
I think it's one of those ones because it's on the outside of the Parthenon in Athens, so it's quite well known. It's like when we went into the Neuvis Museum and they have the thing along the inside, and I said that's the inside of the Parthenon. The full Ionic frieze along the inside. It's just one of those things like you see it so often because it's like it's copied on everything. Like everywhere uses it.
I never would have
know what
known.
you're looking for.
Yeah.
So
well, that's why I have to take you with me to museums because I never know what I'm looking for. I'm like, that's nice. It's a rock. And then you're like, actually.
Oh no, what a hardship for me being the friend that gets taken to museums all the time. I hate that.
I mean, I think it's great because then I get to learn stuff. So yeah, keep filling your head with knowledge, whether it is Chinese or linguistics or how much Big Mac sauce is used in a day. I think all of those
I'm going to come back at you with so many Big Mac facts next time. Next episode, Big Mac facts.
Just 15 minutes of you being like, all right, fact number 1, fact number 2.
Big Mac facts.
All right.
Okay.
Well,
Well,
thank you. Thank
thank you
you.
for having me along.
Yeah, I'm going to stop recording, but it's not going to hang up the call. Thank you. Thank you. And